She was accused of killing hundreds of girls, yet for years, no one stopped her. Servants whispered about screams echoing through the castle walls. Villagers spoke of daughters who never returned. But the woman at the center of it all wasn't a criminal hiding in the shadows. She was one of the most powerful nobles in Eastern Europe, and that power may have kept the truth buried for decades. Elizabeth Báthory was born in 1560 into one of the most influential families in the Kingdom of Hungary. Her relatives included judges, princes, and military commanders. Power surrounded her from the beginning. Wealth, status, and political protection were simply part of her world. But even in childhood, there were signs that her life would not follow a quiet path. She was highly educated for her time. She learned multiple languages, including Latin and German. She studied literature, religion, and politics. In many ways, she was more educated than most noblemen. But she also grew up in a violent era. The 16th century in Hungary was marked by war. The Ottoman Empire pushed into Europe. Nobles fortified their estates. Executions were public. Torture was not unusual. Violence wasn't hidden. It was part of daily life. And Elizabeth grew up watching it. Some accounts suggest she witnessed punishments carried out by soldiers. Others claim she saw servants beaten for small mistakes. Whether these stories were exaggerated later or not, they became part of the narrative surrounding her. But at the time, she was simply a noble girl preparing for marriage. At age 15, she married Count Ferenc Nadasdy. He was a military commander known for fighting the Ottomans. Their marriage united two powerful families. She moved into his estates, including the infamous Szeged Castle. And soon, she was left in charge. Ferenc spent long periods away at war. That meant Elizabeth managed vast lands, servants, finances, and local disputes. This wasn't unusual for noblewomen, but it gave her authority over hundreds of people, and with authority came isolation. The castle sat high above the surrounding villages. Dense forests stretched across the hills. Inside, servants worked quietly. Outside, peasants depended on the Countess for protection and employment. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Years passed. Elizabeth gave birth to children. She handled estate matters. She hosted guests. From the outside, she appeared to be a typical noblewoman. But slowly, rumors began to spread. Servants whispered about harsh punishments. Girls employed at the castle reportedly disappeared. Some villagers claimed they saw bodies taken away at night. At first, these stories stayed quiet. No one wanted to accuse a noblewoman. But the rumors didn't stop. Some accounts described beatings. Others mentioned girls locked in cold rooms. There were claims of starvation, burning, and prolonged punishment. At the time, discipline of servants was common, but these stories suggested something far more extreme. And still, no one intervened. Elizabeth's husband, Ferenc, reportedly tolerated strict discipline. Some sources suggest he even taught her certain punishment methods used in the military. However, historical records on this point remain debated. What is clearer is that after his death in 1604, Elizabeth's authority became absolute. And that's when the accusations intensified. More young girls were brought to the castle. Many were daughters of peasants. They were promised work and training. Families trusted the Countess. Serving a noble household was seen as an opportunity. But some of those girls never returned. Villagers began noticing patterns. A girl would leave home. Weeks later, no letters, no visits. Eventually, silence. When families asked questions, they were given vague answers. Illness, runaways, accidents. But the number of missing girls kept growing. At first, local officials ignored the rumors, accusing a noble could be dangerous. Elizabeth belonged to a powerful family. She had political allies. Her lands were important to the region. But then something changed. Reports began reaching higher authorities. Not just peasants, but minor nobles started speaking. Some claimed their daughters had also been sent to the castle, and when noble families became involved, the situation became harder to ignore, because now the victims weren't only servants. According to later testimonies, Elizabeth began inviting daughters of lesser nobility for education and etiquette. These girls arrived expecting refinement and opportunity. Instead, some allegedly disappeared. That detail raised alarm. If noble daughters were dying, the political consequences could be severe. Pressure slowly built for an investigation, and eventually a powerful figure took notice. György Thurzo, the Palatine of Hungary, was tasked with investigating the claims. He was one of the highest-ranking officials in the kingdom. He also had connections to Elizabeth's family. This made the situation delicate. An accusation against Elizabeth could create political conflict, but ignoring the rumors risked scandal. Thurzo began quietly gathering information. Witnesses were questioned, servants spoke, some described brutal punishments, others claimed to have seen dead bodies. Testimonies varied, but many painted a disturbing picture. And then came the raid. In December 1610, Thurzo and his men arrived at Szeged Castle. Accounts differ on what they found, but reports claim they discovered injured girls inside. Some sources describe bodies, others mention prisoners. The scene, according to testimonies, suggested abuse. Several servants were arrested immediately. Under interrogation, they gave statements describing torture. Some confessed to assisting Elizabeth. Others claimed she personally inflicted punishments. Numbers began appearing in testimony. Some witnesses claimed dozens of victims. Others suggested hundreds. One later account even mentioned over 600 victims, allegedly recorded in a private notebook. However, historians debate the reliability of that claim, since the notebook itself was never produced. Still, the accusations were severe. Elizabeth herself was not put on public trial. Instead, she was placed under house arrest in her castle. This decision may have been political. Executing a noblewoman of her status could destabilize alliances. Her servants, however, were tried. Several were convicted and executed. Their confessions described violent punishments, including beatings, burning, and exposure to cold. Some testimonies may have been obtained under torture, which complicates their reliability, but the court accepted them. Elizabeth remained confined in her rooms. Windows were reportedly sealed. Food was passed through a small opening. She was effectively imprisoned within her own castle. And there she stayed for years. In 1614, she was found dead. No public execution, no dramatic end. Just a quiet death in confinement, but the story didn't end there. After her death, the legend grew. Stories spread across Europe. Some claim she bathed in blood. Others said she sought eternal youth. These details became popular centuries later, but historians note they were not part of the earliest records. Instead, early documents focused on abuse and deaths, not supernatural rituals. This distinction matters, because historians still debate what truly happened. Some argue Elizabeth was a serial killer protected by power. Others suggest she was the victim of political conspiracy. Confiscating her lands would benefit rivals. Removing her influence could shift regional power. There are also questions about testimony reliability. Many witnesses were servants. Some confessions were obtained under torture. Numbers varied widely, and Elizabeth herself never defended herself in court. The truth remains uncertain. But what is clear is that many girls died. Records mention multiple deaths connected to her household. Whether exaggerated or not, something serious occurred within those castle walls, and the isolation of power may have allowed it to continue. A noblewoman controlling vast estates, servants afraid to speak, villagers dependent on her authority. In that environment, rumors could remain hidden for years, until they couldn't anymore. Even today, Elizabeth Báthory remains one of history's most controversial figures. Some call her the most prolific female serial killer. Others call her a scapegoat. The line between myth and fact blurred over centuries, but the mystery remains. Were the stories exaggerated by fear and politics, or did power allow unimaginable cruelty to continue unchecked? Inside Shejte Castle, the truth may have died with her. And the whispers that began in quiet villages still echo today.